If, by changing the temperature of two equal masses of the same substance, it changes their volumes, densities, pressures, and all other dimensions, is it not logical to assume that dimension is in some manner related to the phenomena of attraction and repulsion? One needs no more convincing proof of the relative ability of mass to attract and to repel than this well-known characteristic of all elemental substances to find each other. When substances find each other, they also find their opposites, which revolve in exactly the same plane. Every state of motion is seeking a similar state of motion. Every state of motion has not only its own pressure zone, but its own plane. All of the elements of matter revolve in their own separate planes. The atoms of each element will eventually come together when released from locked positions in higher potentials. Every mass revolving in one plane resists the proximity of mass revolving in any other plane. Any compound mass of varying plane will eventually separate into its constituents, each of which will find its true position in its own plane and pressure zone. Every chemist is thoroughly aware of the relative ability of one mass to attract another, irrespective of distance. Every chemist knows that units of elements, called ions, break away from certain compounds with varying degrees of violence. The chemist calls this phenomena ionization, and thinks of it as a chemical effect, a reaction. Ions are masses. The law for one microscopic ion is the same as for a planet. If the chemist would think of all actions as gravitational and all reactions as radiational effects, he would know that ionization is due to the repellent separative power of magnetic radioactive force to expel these little planetary ions in order that magnetism may carry out its desire to diffuse electrically accumulated masses. The supposition that atomic motion is an electrical effect and that the atoms of the elements are thereby exempted from obeying the laws of gravitation misleads the chemist. He is also misled by the supposition that all matter is composed of exactly similar negative electrons and positive protons in different quantities arranged differently in each kind of atom. The chemist assumes that there is one more electron in mercury than in gold. This new theory is now leading him to the expenditure of useless effort in trying to knock one electron out of mercury to produce gold. One might as well try to knock a planet out of our solar system. The fact is the reverse of the chemist's assumption. If one electron could be knocked out, and if that act would change mercury, the change would not be to gold. It would be to thallium or to lead. Likewise, one electron removed from lead would not produce mercury as hoped. It would result in bismuth. If one of our planets could be knocked out of our solar system, the event would increase our zodiacal expansion by at least 2 degrees and retard our solar evolution by at least 85 million years. The loss of one electron from the element mercury would be equivalent to a substantial discharge toward negative weakness. Thus, this discharge would cause the plane of Mercury to increase its angle to the plane of lutetium, which would be the opposite effect necessary for the production of gold. The only way to change mercury to gold is to increase the contraction pressure of the mercurial atom and thus change its plane to one slightly nearer that of the lutetium atom. The chemist recognizes the variable power of substance to attract and repel in that effect which he has termed valency. Valency is purely an expression of gravitational vibration, as ionization is an expression of radiational variation. The chemist knows that hydrogen and fluoride atoms, if released in a large room, will eagerly find each other. He knows also that hydrogen and carbon atoms, released within an inch of one another, will not find each other. On the contrary, they revolve in planes of such wide angles, and their relative positive charges are proportionately so unequal, that they have to be forced together under the very high pressure of the arc lamp to make them combine. Every chemist knows the variability of pressure in every element at every temperature. Every physicist knows that condensation alters the direction of any vapor. The physicist tests the law of gravitation by producing a state of vacuum which is non-existent in nature. In a vacuum, he finds that a feather and a piece of lead are attracted toward the center of the earth with the same velocity. This is a universe of varying pressures, and the production of an abnormal condition in a tube is not a test of the relative power of substance to attract or to repel substance. If a tube large enough to enclose this planet and long enough to reach the sun's surface could be pumped free of its opposing pressures, the earth would fall to the sun instead of floating in the orbit mapped out for it by the two opposing pressures, which determine its position. Every physicist knows that the specific gravity of every element, compound, or mixture differs from that of any other. That quality in substance which we call weight is merely an indication of the apparent relative ability of substance to attract substance in proportion to its relative density and potential. Every metallurgist knows that some alloys can be produced very simply because of the willingness of some metals to unite and the great unwillingness of others. The metallurgist is accustomed to the use of high pressure in forcing his metals to unite, and the chemist to the use of very low pressures in causing his gases to unite. Modern science recognizes the varying power of substance to attract and to repel in that effect termed electromotive force. But its basic cause is presumed to be electrical. Electricity and gravitation are not yet recognized as identical expressions of the same force. Modern science is perfectly familiar with the oscillatory motion of electromagnetic force, and also with the fact that opposed oscillations are opposed forces. All of the effects of motion are recorded as dimensions. Every dimension has its opposites, and every change in preponderance from one opposite to the other simultaneously changes every other one of the 18 series of opposites to balance that change. The force of attraction, which is electric, and the force of repulsion, which is magnetic, are both opposite pressure dimensions, and they must change their relations as other dimensions change. Neither the force of attraction nor the force of repulsion is in any way an attribute of the one universal substance. Substance has no power to attract, to repel, to unite, or to separate. These qualities belong to motion and not to substance. If either of these qualities were attributes of substance, the unchanging one substance would then be changeable. All mass is accumulated electromagnetic potential seeking the pressure zone of its potential. All mass is either charging, in which case it is flowing in an electric stream of centrifugal preponderance, or it is discharging, in which case it is flowing in a magnetic stream of centrifugal preponderance. Mass flowing in a stream is conditioned by the current of the stream.